Okay, so let's recap my Commonwealth performance. Before we jump into the recap, I'm just going to post the videos from my final session because my final session was the Sunday morning. I flew to South Africa the Sunday night. And I just feel like it's a little bit important to include these videos because, I mean, I hit a massive PB, which was sick. But what happened before the PB wasn't quite as sick. And it did definitely mess with my head on comp day. So I'm just going to show you kind of how squats went in my last heavy session, and also just I'll put my bench videos in there. But bench was like, it was good, there was nothing to really say, everything kind of moved how I wanted it to. But yeah, squats kind of just set the tone for the comp. So I'm just going to quickly play those and then we'll talk through the actual competition itself.
Yeah. It's been a long time coming, it's been a long time. Yeah. This is how, getting down. Yeah. Hey, this is how, I'll be getting down. This is how, it is really done, they can't figure out. They don't understand, so they hold me down and out. We ain't going out like that. Watch me go and bounce right back. Down for the count, but the hound strike back. It get like that. I don't wanna hear it, but you hit me right back. They talking, they told me take the L and move on. Heard it from somebody who's been taking L's their whole life. I don't know what you want. Passive when they play you. Expect the best from people like there's nothing they can do wrong. Seen this movie way too many times to be the fool for you to chew on. Nah, I'm not complaining, but there's things I can improve on. Why would I fight and retreat, then not study and sleep and recover to be able to smother you motherfuckers? I'm going ghost and I'm up to something. Or maybe I'm up to my wits' ends with all of your bitch trends. I'm sick of the system. I'm not into religion, I need something higher and bigger to fix this. Brothers, sisters betray me that I never wrong. Over here it's all solid, this isn't a prison. This isn't a prison. This is free. This is fiction. Listen, hey, I made a bunch of merch, and as soon as I recouped on my expenses.
Okay, so my last squat session, I kept the intensity high going into this comp because normally for my final week of every block, my secondary squat day, which is my earliest squat day in the week, the intensity is always pretty high. Like for both of my squat sessions, the intensity is pretty similar. And so I kept that the same going into comp week, and I didn't taper my squat. I did pull the volume back slightly on my back horse by literally just dropping a couple of reps. I did 3x3 rather than 3x5 at the normal weight that I would do. But my top set, I kept the intensity high because it's what I do every block and it works every single block. So why change it just because it's a competition block? In the past, I have tapered my squat a little bit more and maybe I would still do the same load, but just one rep or a double. It depends obviously on the block itself. But I kept that intensity high and I'm really glad that I did. But that last warm up at 167.5, falling forwards, I've never done that before. Literally never done that before. Like sometimes I do lose balance a little bit, especially now that I've sped up the descent of my squat. It's not uncommon for me to fall on my toes a little bit more, but I still save it. You can't ever really notice it in a video. It's just something that I feel. Never have I fully fallen forwards. The fact that I actually had the instincts to catch that in the rack, I'm very proud of. I have to add that in. Like survival instincts were great. But obviously after that, I was then terrified. I retook the warm-up. I got it. It was fine. It moved, no problem. And then I loaded my top set. Now, recently, I've been having my boyfriend stand behind me for my heavy squats, just so that if I do fail, he can help me make sure I get it on the safeties. Like, I don't expect him to actually, like, lift me up with that weight on my back. But he was getting ready, he was showering, and he was getting, like, the last few bits packed, because I'd packed all of my stuff, so I knew that on the day of travel, the only thing going through my mind was train, shower, leave. So he was just packing his last few bits and stuff, so I didn't want to distract him and make him come out, because I was going to need his help for bench anyway for the unracks. So for squats, I was brave and I did it without a spotter and it was terrifying. I was literally trembling after that fail and I was just so nervous. Like, yes, I saved it and I know my instincts and I know that I've done this long enough that if I failed on a heavier load, I would still be fine. I would still salvage it. Normally, if I fail, what I would do is I would just drop the bar off my back. But because of the setup of the home gym, I can't do that on that rack because the plates are so close to the rack, like the spare plates along the side, that if I did that, the bar would literally land on the plates and that just wouldn't be good. So I know my instincts, and I know like in the moment I would still be able to get it on the safeties. Like I'm smart enough and I've done this long enough, it would be fine. But obviously after a fail like that, I was nervous. So I went into my top set of 182.5 for a triple. I told myself, if it feels shit, I can just stop at 1 rep. I can stop at 2 reps. I don't have to do a triple. And I did, like you'll see, I spent a lot longer between reps than I normally would. I did contemplate re-racking it after the 2nd rep. But then I said to myself, like, you can do this. Like, it's not moving that badly. You just have to go. And I got the 3rd rep. And yes, it was a bit slow, but I was literally shaking. Like, my body was shaking after that fail. And I was nervous. I didn't have a spotter. And I was also conscious that I needed to sink these and get my depth undeniable, obviously, because my next comp was an international comp. Like, I need my depth to be consistent at heavy loads. So I went for it, and I got it. And I was so happy with that PB. Like, I don't quite know how I managed it. But the fact that I hit a 182.5 triple, 4 days out from comp, no spotter after messing up my last warm-up, like when I just mentally was terrified, it set me up really well for comp. Like it made me feel confident that I could do anything under the right circumstances with those spotters around me on the day. Like I could do anything. So I think that was just an important thing to add into this video. And also, I mean, bench was the one I was most nervous for. And obviously I'll talk more about bench when we get to that part of the video. But this last session definitely boosted my confidence with bench is all I'll really say. So I'm going to make a separate video on how I made weight for comp. But let's just say I weighed in at 83.80 and yeah, I literally I'll talk about my refeed and everything as well in another video. But I made weight, not a problem. I knew I wasn't going to have body weight advantage. So for 3rd, it was a pretty close battle for 3rd. Like it was always going to be a close battle for 3rd. There was, I think her name's Reva, she's Canadian. There's Jodie, who's Welsh. There's Lauren, who is a Scottish lifter. And then I think there were a couple more girls that was like, we didn't know where they were at, but they were somewhat close. But it was basically going to be a battle between the 4 of us for 3rd place was kind of how I thought going in. And I didn't know where everyone's numbers were, but I had a rough idea. So I knew I didn't have body weight advantage, but to be honest, I didn't really care. I also didn't have lot number advantage because I was the first to weigh in. So my lot number was number 1, which basically just meant that I wasn't going to have the advantage if I was putting the same attempt in as someone, like let's say on pulls. But because I have the lowest or like the weakest pull, it didn't matter and I didn't care. I knew that my game plan, because I am a subtotal specialist, like my game plan had to just be go 6 for 6 and then just pull what you have on the day. And then if someone can outpull you with a bigger deadlift, so be it. But that was kind of the game plan all along. That is the game plan I have to have for every competition. Like I am not the biggest puller. It's something I would love to work on and I am working on, but especially going into this comp, like I failed my last heavy pull at 190, which is a lift I've pulled multiple times in the past. I shouldn't be failing it. So going in, like my confidence was a bit knocked for deadlifts anyway, but I kind of knew I had to just take it one lift at a time, build my subtotal and go from there, which is exactly what I did. So weighed in, went to the warm-up room, eating, drinking, whatever, fine, felt decent. I was actually incredibly calm. I think, again, I'll talk about that side of it in the weight cutting or like my weight cut video. But once I'd made weight, like that was the bit I was most nervous for. I think that's the bit I'm most nervous for most comps. But once I made weight, I was very calm and I felt pretty good. I just kind of ate a little bit, drank, whatever, was chilling out in the waiting or like the warm-up area. The English coaches started to arrive and I'd actually not met one of them before. Paul Marsh I've met before, and I had Kate handle me as well, which I think I've met her a couple of times very briefly, but I've not really spoken to her before. And then there was another man as well that was coaching the other English lifter in the 84 plus. So this is where things were a little bit different to what I expected actually. So I was planning, or I expected to have a 7-woman flight. There were 7 84 lifters, there were 7 84 plus lifters. We were lifting at the same time, same session. It was supposed to be a flight of 7 84, a flight of 7 84 plus. But because the comps had been running a bit behind, they've been merging flights a lot throughout the week. So I got told a few days out that it was likely we were going to be a 14-person flight, which I was a bit annoyed about. Like, it's fine. Obviously, I can't think about it. It is what it is. But I like quick turnaround. Like, I don't rest for long when I'm at home, and I know that that's something that other lifters struggle with. So it would have been a good advantage for me to have if we did have a really short flight, basically. Like, that was something I was quite excited to have. But that's not how it turned out. So it ended up being a 14-woman flight. But to be fair, it still moved at an okay pace. I still think I probably would have felt better having a little bit of a shorter turnaround, but it was fine. Kate, my handler, I literally said to her, I was like, I just need you to talk to me between attempts to not let me think. And that was kind of the method I went in with. So generally speaking, when I have a larger flight and I have more time between lifts, that's when I start to, like, the self-doubt creeps in and I start to overthink my attempts and what I'm doing. Where if it's quite a quick turnaround, I don't really have time to do that. And I literally it's just like, go, go, go. And for me, that kind of works better, especially because I do recover pretty quickly. Like, I don't need long between attempts anyway. And I planned to take big jumps, so I was kind of set for that. But it was fine. It worked out absolutely fine. I opened on squats at 170 kilograms. I've squatted 170 for a set of 5 at like an RP 6 in the past. So 170 was a very conservative opener for me. And I think a few people were surprised that I opened that light. But I opened at 170 because I prepared for a short flight, so I was ready to take big jumps. I decided to still stick to the same game plan of big jumps, even with a larger flight, because I was like, well, why not just open light and take a bigger jump? That's fine. So I opened at 170, and I'm not gonna lie, all of my warm-ups, all of my attempts, I had in my head the fear of falling. Like, I was so nervous that I was gonna lose balance again. Like, it was playing on my mind the entire time. Like, that last heavy squat session, it messed with me mentally a lot. Like, it really did. And it just made me really paranoid that it was going to happen again, because I didn't necessarily do anything wrong for that last heavy squat. Like, I didn't obviously change anything or anything like that. Like, there was nothing that I was consciously aware of. It just happened in, like, out of nowhere. And so I was really nervous that that might happen again. And it definitely played on my mind a lot. And I didn't say that out loud until I was getting ready to go out for my opener. So I went out for my opener. I will show you, I'll play everything on the screen. But my opening squat, it was fine. Like, it was absolutely fine. It was the confidence booster that I needed. I got all white lights. I went over, and so Paul Marsh was in charge of my attempts, and then Kate was kind of my handler in terms of, like, looking after me, getting me ready to go up and stuff. So I came off, I looked at Paul, and he was like, so my range for my second attempt was 180 to 185. 185 if everything feels good, 180 if I'm feeling nervous or things didn't quite necessarily feel quite as great. Like, I know I can squat 180 on any given day. And he looked at me and he was like, do you want to go in the middle, 182? And I was like, no, just low 185. Like, that was easy. 170 was so comfortable. So I went straight up to 185. And again, it was fine. Like, it was obviously slower. It was a 15 kilo jump. I'd had a huge rest. Like, it wasn't going to be super, super speedy, but it was comfortable enough. So 185, moved really well. And honestly, if I was in training, I probably would have loaded 195 for my top single. Paul Marsh looked at me and he was like, should we just go 192, play it safe? And I said, yeah, like, that's no question, 192, I'm comfortable with that. It's half the jump I've just taken, so it'll be half as difficult on top of what I've just done, if that makes sense. So I was like 192, confident with that, absolutely fine. More than I'd ever loaded before. Like, going into this comp, the most I'd ever done was a 187 double. But I also know that if I've doubled 187, I can squat 5 kilos more for a single. So, like, mentally, I was very confident going into this. And before I went out, I literally looked at Paul and Kate and I was like, I know I can do this, and I know I can grind if I have to, but it's just dealing with the fact that I might have to grind and, like, actually being willing to do that. And Paul looked at me and he was like, it's not going to be super easy. Just grind, like, just get it done. And I don't know what happened. This has never happened to me before. I think the fear of losing balance got to me on this final attempt. I've windmilled that bar. Like, I've never done that before. Like, I did not stay on my midfoot at all. Like, the balance was off in a way I've never had before. And it was just a terribly executed rep. Like, it was terrible. And I don't think it was because it was my max, like, top end, like, at all. Like, I walked off and I felt fine. Like, I literally said to Paul, I was like, I know that was a grind, but I still feel fresh. Like, that wasn't difficult. I did get one red light for depth from the center, but because my stance is so narrow, that's not uncommon. But yeah, no, I did the 192 and I windmilled it, and I was like, that was the worst executed rep. And I remember I kind of windmilled out of the hole, and then I started getting a little bit of speed again, and then I stopped again. It almost paused. And it was when it paused that second time that I remember so clearly just being like, you probably shouldn't give up now, like, just keep going. But in my mind, I was worried I'd already failed the rep on downward movement. But I'm glad I didn't quit and I just kept going, because I did get 2 white lights. So that was a good lift. The jury didn't overturn it. And I don't think they should have. Like, I didn't see any downward movement when I watched the video back. And I think my depth was the same as it was on my previous 2 attempts. Like, everything was clean. But like I say, from the center with a narrow stance, it is quite common for it to look a little bit higher. So I got 192. That was a 5 kilo lifetime PB. That was a 12.5 kilo comp PB. And I only competed back in June. Like, I failed 185 in June, and that was my second attempt at this comp. So squats went incredibly well. And I also, so I didn't look at the scoreboard this comp, which is something I normally do. Like, normally I kind of almost handle myself, and I'm very keen to know what's going on with everyone else. It was actually really funny. I think so Jodie, Welsh competitor, so she was the one that I thought was probably most likely to take third away from me. And she went out before me on, I think it was my final squat, and I looked at Kate and I was like, I don't want to watch this. Like, I don't want to see this. And Kate is very short. I don't know how tall she is, but she is an entire head smaller than me, if not more. And she stood in front of me. She's like, it's fine, just look, like, I'll stand in the way. I was like, I can see straight over your head. But it was fun. It was funny. But no, I didn't watch Jodie's squats, but I did notice everyone that I thought was going to out squat me, apart from one person, was going out before me for their thirds. And obviously you can tell from the crowd if people make lifts or not. And so I kind of knew going into this third that if I got it, I was getting a squat medal. I wasn't sure what medal at the time because I wasn't paying that much attention, but I was very aware that this would be a squat medal. And it was. And I got a silver. I think I've got it here. I got a silver on squats. 192.5 was enough for a silver. I think the gold went to Nicole, who I think she won overall in the end. South African lifter. She has had incredible training. Like, she was my pick to win, to be honest, out of everyone. But I think she squatted 197. I could be wrong, but I think she squatted 197. So I wasn't even too far off of a gold on squat. Like, I obviously didn't have 197 on that day. I need to sort my balance issues out and my nerves for that, but like, to get a squat silver, I was so happy. Like, I did not expect that. So really happy with that. And then we went on to bench, and in training, I have been having issues with my lower back when it comes to bench. Like, a lot of pain in the lower left side of my back. Nothing that I thought was going to cause major issues, but it was enough that I was nervous going into bench. Like, it was just uncomfortable, I guess. Like, it wasn't impacting my strength, and I knew I could deadlift after with no issues, but obviously you don't want back pain, and it's something that had been really bothering me a lot. But actually setting up in the warm-up room, it was nowhere near as bad as it had been. I think because we'd been doing so many steps on the days leading into comp. Like, we were literally doing, I think the 2 days before comp, we did 20,000 steps, pretty much. Like, my back had obviously got a lot of movement, and it wasn't ever 20,000 steps non-stop either. It was literally like a couple thousand at a time. So it was lots of little walks, and obviously the heat as well. I didn't have anywhere near as much pain in my lower back. It was still a little bit, but nothing like it had been. But instead of having back pain, I kept going so dizzy. And I think it's just because I would obviously set up, and it's not uncommon for me to go a little bit dizzy on my first couple of warm-ups on bench, just because I'm setting up so tightly. But normally as the session kind of goes on, that goes away. But this time it didn't. But I think the reason it was worse is because I didn't have the back pain. So I was just sitting up and diving off of the bench so much quicker than I normally would that I would just get head rush. So that wasn't ideal, but it was quite bad. I had another electrolyte tablet as I was warming up for bench just to kind of make sure I was hydrated and stuff, and it wasn't anything like that causing it. And I had no cramping either, which this is the first comp in a long time. Bearing in mind the heat that we were in, that I haven't had cramping, so that was brilliant as well. But yeah, so bench, I started warming up, was absolutely fine. I was nervous opening on 105. So in my mind, that was too heavy of an opener, just because bench, for the first 2 weeks of my comp block, bench did feel terrible. And I mean terrible. But the last 2 weeks of my block, it did start to feel really good. So my last heavy session where I benched 105 for long pause singles was a massive confidence boost for me that I can open on 105. I didn't send my openers to Paul until I had done that session because I just wanted to be sure that it was a sensible opener. And it absolutely was. Like, my main goal with bench in this comp, like, I knew I was probably going to come away with a medal anyway, but my main thing was just to get a PB. Like, I've been stuck at 107.5 as my comp PB for like a year now, and I've repped 107.5 so many times that there's no reason that should be my max in comp anymore. So I was like, if I open on 105 and it feels like shit, I can just do a 2.5 jump and then another 2.5 jump. Like, I know I can bench 105, even if it moves terribly, like, I can do it. But also, if I do 105 and it moves well, I can do 110 possibly 115 at most. Like my top end for the day was 115 is what I kind of put as my, like, if everything feels perfect, I'll go 115. But yeah, so the ranges was 105 opener, and then it was 107.5 to 110 for my second, and then 110 to 115 for my third was the kind of the plan. And so it did opener at 105, and I did mess it up a little bit. So Paul looked at me as I came off and he was like, what did you just do? So the new Eleiko pad, I love. Like, it is fantastic. And the carpet, my bench setup, I have been preparing for a slippy carpet because every single time I've competed, the carpet has been slippy and it's messed up my setup. So I've been training on a doormat that is quite slippy purely to prepare myself for comp carpet. Except the carpet had no slide, like literally no slide whatsoever. So I set up for my opener, and normally as I get the lift off and then I like set my hips, as my hips lower, my feet will slide forward ever so slightly to where they'll then stay. They weren't going anywhere. So I was in the wrong position. So I had to actively lift my feet and move them, which when you've got the bar in your hands is not the most sensible thing to do. Like, I probably should have re-racked it, but it was fine. In my mind, I was like, it's your opener, you can do this. And so I kind of over-tucked a little bit and my feet weren't in the right place, and it was just a bit of a messy rep. It was still pretty quick, and it's not something you'll probably notice from the camera, but it just didn't feel great. And even Paul noticed something wasn't right. But I said it, I just messed up my setup. Like, I'll go straight to 110. Like, I still feel strong enough to do 110. So I did 110, and it was really comfortable. Like, I was really nervous, don't get me wrong. Like, that was one of the most nervous moments of the comp for me. I was very nervous going out for 110, but again, I was just saying to myself, you have done this so many times. Like, I can't keep count of the amount of times I've benched 110. Like, I know I've got it. So I just went out confident. The press commands were also pretty I don't want to say generous in terms of they weren't strict enough. Like, they were exactly as they should be. They weren't super strict. They weren't super lenient. Like, I controlled the bar to my chest, so I got a quick press command. That's the way it should be. So I was pretty confident I had the 110. It was just like the nerves of finally breaking past that barrier of 107. So I loaded 110 and I got it. And then we went for the sensible 112 third because it's just not worth risking it on bench. Just get that extra 2.5 kilos for my subtotal. And I got it, which also got me a silver on bench press. So that is 2 silver medals. I was expecting to probably only walk away with a bench medal in this competition. Like, that is all I was probably expecting to get, to be honest with you. I completely lost hopes of podium. I completely lost hopes of a squat medal. I thought I'd walk away with a bench medal. And to be honest, I was okay with that. I said to my boyfriend, I was like, as long as I walk away with a medal that isn't just a participation medal, I'm okay with that. Like, it's still a successful comp. But no, 2 silvers so far. And then we had deadlifts. So, deadlifts have never been my best lift. Never. They're never going to be, probably. I don't want to say that out loud because I feel like that is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Can't get my words out. But deadlifts have never been the best lift for me. I'm not someone that's going to pull for the win. I'm just not. I was shocked that I didn't open on deadlifts, I'm going to be honest. Or like was the first person in the flight. But I wasn't. I think I was like 4th or 5th. So I was near the front. I opened at 170. But if you've watched my videos, you know that I messed my thumb up a while back. And it's still not great. I don't really talk about it anymore because I've kind of just accepted that this is just how my thumb is now. It's still not great. Like, my thumb joint, I think I dislocated it a few months ago and it just hasn't really healed. I don't know exactly what I did, but it's just not great. And for a while, when I was deadlifting, it made it a lot worse because of the impact when the bar then hit the floor. But I've been able to deadlift pain-free for a while now, until I did my last warm-up. I think it was 155. I pulled 155 in the warm-up room. It felt all right. Like, it wasn't super speedy, but deadlifts never are, but it felt easy enough. And as I dropped the bar on the floor, the rebound through my hand, my thumb was like the most pain I have had probably since I first did it, possibly more. Like, it was, I can't express. Like, I genuinely thought in that moment that I was going to be leaving that competition with a broken thumb. Like, I didn't know what the hell was going to happen. It was too late to drop my opener. I knew it wasn't a strength issue. Like, I knew if I just gripped the bar and went for it, I would still be able to deadlift. But I was not confident that I would be able to do all 3 pulls and leave with my thumb intact. I went for a pee before I did my opener. After I'd done my last warm-up, I literally went straight to the loo, pulling my singlet down. I was like in agony. Like, I wanted to cry. Like, it was, I don't think I can express the amount of pain I felt in my thumb. And then it was just going through my mind. I was like, what am I going to do if I break my thumb? Like, I can't break my thumb while I'm in South Africa. Like, that's just not okay. And I was like, I'm just going to have to commit and just deal with it after. I'm just going to have to get the comp out of the way and then worry about it after. Thankfully, I didn't notice it on the platform. And I kind of forgot about it. As soon as I went out to do my opener, it just completely left my mind. I put the 170 on the floor, and because I think I put a bit more pressure on the bar as it went in the floor, so it didn't get to ricochet quite as much, or like rebound quite as much. So I didn't actually make my thumb any worse when I was pulling, so that's good. But yeah, so opener, 170. It felt fine. It didn't feel super quick. It didn't feel super slow. I'm going to be honest though, as soon as bench was done, like I was sweating. Normally I don't sweat on comp day. Okay, this is for context. Normally on comp day, I'm like, it's 9 lifts, it's 9 attempts, it's only one of each lift is probably going to be difficult. Like, I'm not going to sweat on comp day. But by this point, the room had obviously, like the venue had filled with people, the aircon you couldn't really notice anymore, and it was very stuffy and very hot. And so I remember coming off after my second bench and being very sweaty, which isn't like me when I compete. And by the time I sat down about to warm up for deadlifts, because we didn't really get a time to rest between each attempt, each lift. So after squats, it was straight into warm up for bench. After bench, it was straight into warm up for deadlift. I sat on the chair and just had a quick snack. And I literally just sat there and I was so hot and I was just tired. Like, I felt exhausted. And warming up, I couldn't be arsed. Like, in all honesty, I really couldn't be arsed. And that's how I felt. So warm-ups didn't feel fantastic. I went out to do the 170. It was fine. But by this point, energy levels had dropped. I didn't want to have any more caffeine just because of how dizzy I was going and stuff on bench. And I didn't feel like I needed anything extra. I was just tired. So I went out for 170. I looked at Paul and I was like, 182. Like, that didn't feel amazing, but it didn't feel terrible. So we went 182, and then he came up to me and he was like, I think you need a third, but I'm not sure. And I just assumed I must need a third. Like, these other girls can pull. Like, I was expecting Jodie from Wales to pull at least like 210, 215 plus. Like, and I was really expecting a couple people to be in a position to pull for my podium spot. But he was like, I think you probably need a third. And I was like, well, I kind of expected that. Like, I don't expect a podium without a 9 for 9 performance. So we loaded 182. It was fine. It moved well enough. Like, it was comfortable. It wasn't a max effort lift at all. And then Jodie missed her second pull at 207, which would have put her just like, it would have tied our totals, but she had body weight advantage, I believe. So she missed her second, but she missed it just off the floor, which I'd never seen her do before. Like, normally if she drops it, it's going to be a lockout. So Paul was like, I've dropped your third. So originally put in 190. He was like, I've dropped your third to 187. Just add 5 kilos to your total. That should be enough. Like, she's failed her second. She's the only one pulling for your position. As long as you get this, I don't think she'll have any chance of overtaking you. He went, you might be fine without it though. And it was those words, I think, that just made me mentally be like, meh, we'll see what happens. I didn't come here to podium. Like, I didn't expect a podium. So I went out for my third. I pulled my sock up, which was obviously covered in talc, before my third. I did only pull it from the back. Like, I'm adamant I didn't get any talc on my hands. But both Paul and Kate looked at me and were like, what are you doing? Like, one of us can pull your socks up. You shouldn't be pulling your socks up. They're covered in talc. And then I went out, and I obviously set my position wrong for my third pull, because the only time I lose it on grip like that is when my positioning is off. And you can tell from the fact that it was quite sticky on my thighs and stuff. It was just a bad pull. So I dropped the 187. And I came off and I just looked at them and I just shrugged. I was like, it is what it is. So then we all went out the back and we were just watching the scoreboard to see whether or not I came third. And I did. I am officially a podium in the Open at Commonwealth. I got third place overall, 487.5 total. Bearing in mind deadlifts were terrible on the day as well. That was a 10 kilo total PB. And I am ecstatic. Like, I felt so strange. Like, I didn't know how to feel in that moment, because I genuinely did not expect to come away with a podium. Like, these other girls training, especially Jodie's, had been so good. I was like, there is no chance. Like, on a good day, she's definitely stronger than me, was what was going through my head. But I think I was also thinking that because I didn't expect myself to have a good day. I've got such a terrible record of just bad comp days, and then because training going into comp wasn't fantastic, and like mentally I was just a bit more nervous, like especially with deadlifts, I was like, I've kind of written off the chance of coming third. But then it's that thing of, you know, if you've just got to stick to your guns, and you've got to believe in yourself, and you've got to kind of believe in the experience that you've got. Like, I've competed for a long time. A 6 for 6 Sian is not easy to beat. Like, my pull needs work to get me to a more competitive level, but at the level I'm at, if I can go 6 for 6, and this comp has really reaffirmed that for me, I'm not easy to beat. Like 6 for 6, and you're gonna need a big pull to get ahead of me, because my bench is that much further ahead of a lot of these other girls in my category that I'm competing with. Like, I have that advantage. My squat is also more like, I can squat 2.5 more than most people I go against, unless they're literally like the top lifters in our weight class. So I was so happy. Like, I don't know what to say. Coming third at my first open international is huge, and I'm incredibly happy with that. Okay, just had a little lunch break. So I came third, and I'm incredibly happy with that result, considering I was so tired by the end of comp as well. Like, the heat is exhausting. I'm not good in the heat anyway. So the first couple of days in South Africa, I did kind of avoid going outside as much as possible and stuff. And I definitely noticed by the time it got to warming up for deadlifts, like my energy levels had gone. So to still come away, even though my pull was terrible, to still come away in third, like, I absolutely could not complain. So I put a Q&A box up on my Instagram earlier, and I have already, I think, covered a lot of the questions that I got. But there were a couple more that I was asked. So one of them was, how do I deal with nerves? So to be honest, on the day I didn't really feel nervous. Not particularly nervous anyway, like no more than I probably would for like a heavy training session. I think with like the way I approach comp, like, I'm very much, you know, it is what it is at this point. Like, I'm here, I've done all the training, I've set myself up as well as I can do to succeed. So I just have to trust my instincts. I have to trust that I know how to squat, I know how to bench, I know how to deadlift. And I just have to trust that, I don't know, I can gauge my strength well enough to know what's there on the day, which I think is a big skill that you need in order to have successful competitions. Like, you have to be able to read your body on the day. You have to be able to know what you've got left on each lift, rather than just taking, you know, what you want to be there. You have to take what you logically believe is actually there. So yeah, I don't really have much of an answer on how I dealt with my nerves, because I didn't massively have them. I think I just accepted my fate almost before the comp had even started. Like, I just accepted that whatever happens, happens. I'm here, I'm back on the international platform. That was a big goal of mine for this year. And I just have to trust the process and see what happens. And I think depending on the sort of person you are, like, I am a better lifter when I'm calm. So for me, it was like, forget that you're in a competition, forget that you're competing right now, forget that there's anything on the line every time you go out to lift, and just enjoy it and just live presently in the moment. Chat to the people around. Like, my handler Kate, like, I just chatted at, well, I talked at her pretty much constantly between attempts and stuff. And for me, that works really well. But if you look around in a waiting area, like, or like a holding area, it's common. Like, I'm pretty sure all of the other girls had their headphones in. They were really like focusing on their music, zoning out, and just kind of maybe visualizing what they were going to do. And everyone is different as to what works for them. So in terms of dealing with nerves, like, I genuinely didn't really have a lot by the time comp got here. I had more wobbles during my training leading up to comp than actually on comp day. And when I was having those wobbles and those nerves leading into comp, I would just talk to people that I knew understood and could help me rationalize those feelings and those thoughts that I was having. And I did actually write notes on my phone as well around, like, why I'm doing this comp and what my actual goals are for this comp outside of just certain numbers. And that's what one of the girls that I spoke to about my nerves and stuff suggested doing. And I wrote them down on my phone so that I knew if at any point I was having moments of self-doubt, or I was comparing myself to the other lifters or anything like that, and I was getting a bit overwhelmed and just too nervous, I could just read those notes on my phone and just remember exactly what I'm there for. So that's something that I would definitely recommend doing if you do struggle with nerves. Like, you have to just focus on yourself. Control what you can control. Like, you can't control what anyone else does. Like, if someone else has a crazy successful day, you can't do anything about it. All you can do is focus on your own movements, your own lifts, your own attempts. So that's, I guess, my best approach when it comes to nerves. Another question was, how long was I actually in South Africa for before I competed, and do I think that I kind of timed things right? Because a few people that competed on the same day as me and just throughout the competition have said that they would maybe do things differently next time. So some people regretted going out so early, some people might have regretted flying out so late. I actually am really happy with how it worked out for me. And the weight cut video will talk in more depth about some of these things, but basically we arrived in South Africa the Monday morning. We didn't get to the venue or like the Sun City Resort until early afternoon on the Monday. And then I had Tuesday, Wednesday as 2 full days before competing Thursday morning. And I actually think that was the perfect timing because my body weight shot up after that first day. So when I weighed myself Tuesday morning, I was nearly 86 kilograms. And that is basically just from retention on the flight. It's because of what I ate when I got to the airport and like not really sleeping and stuff as well. Like it's a number of different factors. My body weight did shoot up, which is like everyone's body weight shot up after the flight. Like it's an 11-hour long haul flight. Of course your body weight's going to shoot up, at least to a certain extent. So because of that, I then had to kind of gut cut and cut weight just to be safe, because you don't know how long it's going to take for this retention to come off either. Like some people were saying to me, oh, you'll be fine. Like after 2 days, my weight was back down to normal. But for me, like I only had 2 days until I weighed in, so I couldn't risk anything. So I basically had to do a little bit of a gut cut, which I will talk through in more detail. But because of that, and just because of the food availability as well, if I'd have gotten there earlier, I'd have been really limited on what I could eat, and general volume and things wouldn't have been, like I wouldn't have been fueling myself anywhere near as well as I was when I was at home. So only having 2 full days in South Africa where I was gut cutting anyways worked out really well for me. Like if I'd have arrived a week earlier, like yes, I was doing loads of walking when I was out there, but I wouldn't have been able to eat the normal nutrient dense, like good whole foods that I eat at home. So I got an extra good few days of that sort of food and those home cooked meals and meal prep before flying out there. And then it was straight into gut cut mode. And I think timing wise, that was perfect for me. I spent the first 2 days, I didn't really go out in the sun because I don't deal that well in the sun. Like I burn really easily. And obviously the last thing I want is to be sunburn or sunstroke or anything like that when I'm competing. So the first couple of days, apart from walking to and from places, we didn't really go out in the sun too much. We might have spent like an odd hour by the pool here and there, but I would always sit under the umbrella in the shade, and the pool was actually really nice and cool. And well, I say it was a bit too cold at times in the hotel, but it was quite nice, obviously, once you're in there and stuff. And yeah, so I think I timed it really well because I basically got there early enough to mitigate any body weight issues, but I didn't get there too early that I then had to struggle with food and nourishing myself. And essentially I got more days at home fueling myself properly. I also didn't have to lift properly when I was out there before I competed either. I did 1 accessory day in the hotel gym on the Tuesday, and it was just incredibly light. It was literally like 4 movements, RP sub 6, like just to literally move my body. I didn't have to go into the training hall and train in there, or like the warm-up area and train in there, which a lot of people had to do for their taper sessions. And I didn't hear good things about it either. Like it was very chaotic, very busy. So I'm really glad that I got to do all of my SBD sessions at home in a familiar environment, especially because I don't taper my squat as well. Like I didn't taper my squat at all. So I didn't have to train when I got there and then like panic about things not feeling as good, or just deal with the chaos and the busy. Like I'm not good in busy environments when I train. Like I get really stressed and overwhelmed and overstimulated, and I didn't want to have to deal with that. So to be honest, timing wise, I think I timed it perfectly. And if I compete internationally again, which I'm hoping obviously will, I will continue to get there 2-3 full days before I have to compete. Obviously depending where it is and like what the food and stuff is like. And typically I would like to take food with me for travel, but I wasn't sure how that worked with South Africa because I think the rules are a bit more strict about taking food into the country. So I was like, if I just travel like 2-3 days before I compete, I can deal with 2-3 days of kind of finding what food works and getting myself at weight. So timing wise, I think I'm really happy with that, and I wouldn't really change anything with what I did. And then we got a 3 days, 2-3 days after I competed to really enjoy the resort and kind of do anything we hadn't yet done. And I think that, yeah, timing wise, it was perfect, and I'm really happy with that. The thing is with Commonwealth, like I didn't take the comp that seriously, and this sounds really kind of unappreciative of the opportunity. But in my mind, Commonwealth is a very entry-level international competition. And I think that's just because I did it so early on in my lifting career. Like my second year of lifting, I did Commonwealth. And it wasn't particularly hard for me to get there. And that sounds kind of I think that sounds really bad, but it's just because I naturally was pretty strong when I started anyway. And that is because I had a sporting background and I trained hard from day one. And, you know, I bodybuilt for about a year or so before I ever switched to powerlifting as well. Like, I had a good foundation. I didn't just turn up and I was strong. Like, I did work for it. But I've never really classed Commonwealth in that high of a regard. So I went into this competition. I took it seriously, obviously, like I really wanted to do as well as possible. And for a while I was confident I'd come away third, and then my confidence wavered. But I treated this competition kind of in a much calmer way. I didn't see it as a competition with other people. The only pressure I had and the only goals I had going into this competition is that I wanted to enjoy it and I wanted to PB my total. Obviously I wanted a bigger total PB than I got, like 10 kilos is still not reflective of the strength that I've got. But I enjoyed myself, even though it wasn't my strongest day. Like, it absolutely wasn't my strongest day. Like, a 192.5 squat is not my max. Like, I mean, I did mess up the execution, like, massively. A 112.5 bench, I still don't think is my max either. It's just a confidence thing. I've really struggled mentally with bench lately. And deadlifts have just been a shambles, but I've pulled more than 182.5 in competition for, like, I've pulled 190 in comp before. So I know that it wasn't my strongest day, and I still came away third, and it's really boosted my confidence going forwards, which is another big thing I wanted. Like, I wanted to enjoy competing again. I don't remember the last time I enjoyed a competition, and I wanted to just boost my confidence, and that is exactly what has happened with Commonwealth. So I am incredibly happy with how it went. Obviously, I would have loved to have totaled more. Like, I'm chasing a 500 plus total, and it's just, I'm slowly getting closer every time, and I know it won't be long before I'm past it. Like, I have the capability to do way over 500. It's just not come together on the day yet, but that's also fine, because at the end of the day, the main thing is placing in these competitions. Like, I can hit big numbers or whatever in training, and I can prove that I can lift over 500 kilos as my total, but it's what you do on the day and on the platform that counts. And I also proved to myself in competition, like in this comp, that if I just go 6 for 6, it is not easy to beat me. Like, it isn't. And it's also massively boosted my confidence for what's next, because this morning I paid my entry into the British. So I have officially signed up for this year's British. It is less than 6 weeks away. I think it's literally like 5 weeks tomorrow that it starts. I wanted to do 2 sessions at home once I got back from Commonwealth before signing up, just to make sure my body felt healthy enough and strong enough. And it does. And my first couple of sessions have gone really well. I will document that training and everything, obviously, as well, leading into British. That'll be the next video up after this one, with my first couple of sessions back. But honestly, knowing that I still have more room to give, like, I genuinely believe that in 5.5 weeks time, I will PB my total again. And even if I don't, like, I've just competed. I just came third at Commonwealth. Going into British, I'm keeping the exact same mentality of no pressure, just have fun, listen to your body, take what's there on the day, and just soak up the experience. So I think that's pretty much everything. My other questions were more related around, like, cutting weight and stuff, so I'll cover those in my weight cut video that will hopefully be up in the next week or so. But I'm going to wrap this comp recap up here. It's been a lot of me just talking. I'm sure I've missed points that I wanted to cover, but it's fine. Overall, I can't complain. Like, yes, I wanted to total more, but I didn't need to. And that is the thing that I need to just remind myself. Like, I did really well. I came away with 3 medals. I was literally expecting maybe 1 bronze on bench, and that was it. And I came away with 2 silvers and a bronze overall in a fairly stacked class as well. Like, it was a pretty stacked class. Like, first and second were in their own little battle, and then the battle for third there was quite a few of us there. So I'm really happy with how it went, and I'm also very excited to compete again, which I'm never usually excited to compete after a competition. Usually after a competition, I'm just dying to get back to an off season and to build my total and to prove how strong I am. Where this time I feel like I don't need to prove anything. Like, I know I'm stronger than this, and I didn't need to be stronger than this to come third, so it doesn't matter if I couldn't put it together on the platform, because I have another opportunity in less than 6 weeks to show out and total even more. So I'm very excited. I will document my prep into British, so please follow along with that if you are interested. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know what you thought of my performance down below. And if you have any questions, I can obviously cover them in future videos as well, or reply in the comments. So just let me know down below. But that is a wrap on my comp recap and my Commonwealth series. If you have kept up, I really genuinely appreciate it. It was also super cool in South Africa. Meeting people that had been following along with my YouTube series was really, really cool. And I'm very grateful to people that said hello and like followed along. So yeah, but I'm gonna wrap the video up here. Thank you if you've made it to the end. I really appreciate you. And I will hopefully see you in the next video where we go through my British prep.